You get two in a row. So the past few days I've been a little depressed. Why? About what? A girl. And the only way to deal with that is hard liquor or ranting about Yu-Gi-Oh! And guess which one my therapist says is healthier. So, in yesterday's video, I spent a reasonable amount of time talking about some philosophical differences between real events and true events and ways we deal with them, and I don't feel like talking about it again. Just go watch that video if you haven't seen it already. And I mentioned that I was working on an article that included those ideas. And, you know, one of the things that I feel like is easier to do than write an article is just make a video on these topics, you know? So I've just decided I'm going to make maybe a few videos, and I'll still write an article, but it's a lot easier to talk than it is to write, I think, because of the stream of consciousness aspect of it. So one of the things I mentioned was something that I would just say is the illusion of choice. And so that's what I'll talk about today. So there are a lot of situations where you're faced with a dilemma. And that dilemma is going to be either that you can put all of your cards into a play knowing that they're going to get negated, or some other thing will happen to them, you know, whatever occurs that makes, you know, you using your cards useless. Or you're just going to realize this and admit defeat. Like, you know, there's no difference between the two. Both of them result in you losing the game. There's no reason not to just admit defeat unless you think that maybe there's a chance, maybe it's game 3 and the only way that you can, you know, get anything done is to try. But say it's game 1, round 1 of a tournament, your opponent doesn't know what you're on. I mean, you're going to scoop. You're just going to, you know, not tell them what you're on and hide that info. But what you've come across is a scenario where you have the illusion of choice. You're not getting to play the game, and there's no outcome where trying to play the game actually wins you the game. And I feel like that's pretty obvious. I feel like there's not too much to talk about in that regard. I feel like pretty much everyone has experienced that and can relate to it. But it goes a little deeper when it comes to this illusion of choice. And one of the most common ones that I feel like is when, say you're in a bad position. Say your opponent sacked you, and you can still win the game. But let's say that your opponent has 2 back row and you have 1 MST, and one of those back row is their MST and the other back row is a solemn. And if you hit the solemn, you win the game, and if you hit the MST, you lose the game because they solemn you and they kill you next turn. Keep in mind that what we're assuming happened is that this entire game you have been completely and totally rocked by your opponent drawing the most insane cards possible. We found ourselves with a real occurrence where, you know, it may not be the typical occurrence, but we've gotten ourselves sacked, and that's, you know, we just have to, you know, look at it and go, oh, I got sacked. Okay, cool. And so now we're in a position where even though we got unlucky, we can still win the game. But only if we get lucky again. So now we have to hit this 50-50. Now we have to, maybe we have to top deck our out. And it's possible. But in this case, you know, we have an MST and we're looking down, and we don't know we don't even know what their backer are. We just know that if we hit something good, we can win the game, and if we don't, then we lose. As it turns out, we have something good to hit and something that is bad to hit in this situation. Of course, this is, again, a purely theoretical situation, but you've all been in it. You've all been in this situation. There's 2 back row, you have 1 MST. One back row loses you the game, the other back row wins you the game. This, I mean, This is a prime situation of the illusion of choice. When you are set to win a game if you get lucky, in the face of bad luck, for the record. When you're set to win a game if you get lucky, and lose it if you don't. Well, that's every game of Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Not entirely. Every game of Yu-Gi-Oh definitely does have some element of luck in it, and I've talked about this at length in like the group chats and stuff. I typically will tell people the game, I'll make the offhanded comment of the game is literally all luck, and there's and it doesn't matter. And of course I don't believe it's all luck, and I can talk for ages about how I think that luck is too important in the game, how it is far more important than skill, how people cope about it too much, and they think that playing better gets them a lot farther than it actually does. But there are a lot of situations where your ability to win the game is literally entirely predicated on getting lucky. And it's not a matter of you necessarily even having a good read. What if they set both those back row that turn? And that would be a good play from him, right? Because they would want to, have the scenario where you are picking between winning and losing and not knowing which one you're picking. That's what you kind of want your opponent to be doing. And so you don't actually have a choice here. That's the thing. Your choice is which back row do you target, but you don't know which back row is which. You don't have an actual choice. You just it's completely a coin flip in this scenario, and these happen pretty often. And that's just one of many examples that that I could give on something that is the illusion of choice. But the illusion of choice is probably the most common scenario of losing in Yu-Gi-Oh. And, in current Yu-Gi-Oh, it pretty often manifests itself in this unbreakable board scenario where, you either, get all your cards negated or you just scoop. You don't have a choice. That's a very simple illusion of choice, like I said. And these other illusions of choice are a lot more complicated, but they come up more often in older formats. So, for example, say you're playing GOAT format. Edison and GOAT both have MST legal at one copy. They both have this same dynamic where you could, completely and totally just be picking between cards that were freshly set and not really having any idea what you're doing when you're hitting them. You just know that you need to hit one of them. But we have, for example, in GOAT format, we have Trinity, Pot Grace, and Duo. And there are a lot of situations with, especially Delinquent Duo, you don't really have a choice as to what you discard. You don't have any choice as to what you discard for the first card. But there are a lot of situations where the second card you discard doesn't actually matter. It's simply the fact that your opponent hit the good one first. So it doesn't matter that you are discarding Serpent for your second Duo because they just hit your BLS. They just hit the win condition you were building toward the past 3 turns. They just hit your Pot of Greed and they played their own. It just doesn't matter if their Duo went 1 for 1 or not. They can hit your Knight Assailant and, you grab back a Dekoichi, a Spy, your own Faith, maybe. It's in those situations where and effectively in this case, Duo is just a Reaper because, you're discarding the good card. It's fine. It went 1 for 1. But the choice doesn't matter. And a lot of times, that's how the illusion of choice really works in this game. It's not that you're not getting a choice at all, like with the unbreakable board scenario or the MST on 2 back row scenario. It's that any choice you make doesn't actually matter. So there's two situations. The one I've discussed before, where your game is decided by a coin flip. You've already been sacked. You've already gotten unlucky. Now your game's decided by a coin flip. So you have to get lucky in the face of already extraordinarily bad luck, or you get given a choice and it doesn't matter what you choose. Those are the two main scenarios for the illusion of choice, and I'm going to talk about both of them and how you reconcile them and continue playing the game. Because once you realize how many scenarios in this game come down to this illusion of choice, you honestly kind of stop liking it as much. Because one of the most important things to remember is that this game is not designed for the better player to always win. It is 100% designed with bad matchups on purpose. So, I mean, just playing against a deck that beats yours. Like, that is purposeful design. They want that to happen. Konami, like, lives for seeing that happen. They want decks that make unbreakable boards that you can't really do anything about except, have Nibiru when they make it, or like you have Sphere Mode or something. And they have outs. They obviously print outs to these situations. But the entire purpose of designing the game in this way is that the better player is not supposed to win every game. And that's not to say skill doesn't matter, because a better player does win a fair amount of games. But it's more to say that the game wouldn't sell very well if a better player always won. It's purposeful that you lose to idiots sometimes, that you lose to getting sacked. And this illusion of choice is the most purposeful element of this type of game design. So the number one thing when it comes down to it is realizing that a lot of your gameplay, you have no agency. You do not decide the first 6 cards in your deck. You can play certain cards that might decide the top card, but typically you don't decide the top card of your deck either. At every point in time, you are at the mercy of RNG in this game. And you can make all the reads you want, but the reality is that most often the decisions that you make in the game are based on the cards that were drawn, and you have no choice over those cards. Now, of course, when you play Black Whirlwind, you have a choice of which Blackwing to search. When you play Rhoda, you have a choice of which Warrior to search. And I mean, some decks will play Rhoda and they will always search Stratos. Some decks will play Rhoda and they will always search Armageddon Knight or Grefford. They only have like 2 real options. But I mean, even when you play Vayu, you can still search for Necrogarna, and that can be a discard, a crucial discard even for your Greffer. You can, and obviously Goat format warriors, you have Blade Knight, you have DD Warrior, Lady Exile Force, Mystic Swordsman, Donzalug, Zambyra. You have Sasuke Samurai, everything under the sun in the warrior toolbox in Goat format. And there are decks that have similar, Rhoda and Hero Frog can search Junk Frog. So there are cards that you play that give you legitimate choices. And one of the key factors of building good decks is building to limit the impact that the illusion of choice has on your gameplay. So, if you play decks like early, 2002, 2003 decks that didn't really have very many searchers, you're always at the mercy of RNG here. Like, the illusion of choice is always looming over your head. Your plays, you have a choice in how you make your plays once you have your cards, but you don't have a choice in which plays you are allowed to attempt to make. And that's obvious to anyone. I don't think I have to really talk too long about how the majority of your decisions are made based on the cards that are drawn. That's just I can't imagine that people need to be told that. And another thing is that it's kind of a small tangent. I'll get back to the actual point soon. I was talking in the group chat earlier about my audience, and one thing I mentioned was that I don't have a lot of subscribers because, and I don't care about having a lot of subscribers for the record. I'm not like, you know, going on a crusade to get a million billion subscribers, but the main reason I don't have a lot of subscribers is because I'm already like, you know, Edison, which is the format for which I make most of my content, or at least in relation to. It's Yu-Gi-Oh in general, and I mention other formats, but most of the people watching are Edison players. It's already a niche within the niche that is Yu-Gi-Oh, and so like inherently, I'm just not going to have as many subscribers as like MBT or SEMO, because I mean they make content that appeals to a much wider variety of Yu-Gi-Oh player, and the main Yu-Gi-Oh players, which are current players. The majority of people who play Yu-Gi-Oh still play current. And a lot of Edison players that I know also still play current and just dabble in Edison as well. Some play current as their main format and just like play Edison casually. Some play Edison as their main format and play current casually. The point is, like, my audience is for people who are already quite advanced in the game, I would say. No one who is like new to the game wants to sit here and listen to me, and I know that. And no one who like doesn't know basic functions of probably, I would say every deck in Edison. If you just don't like functionally understand Edison, you probably don't care about the philosophical stuff that I'm talking about in relation to Edison, which is fine. So basically, I've just, you know, it's come to where I'm making content basically for like a top 1% of players who like care about really improving their like theoretical and philosophical understanding of the game. Yeah, so that was my little tangent, and honestly, I don't remember where I was before going on it, but I know that I was talking about something regarding the illusion of choice, because that's what this video is about. But yeah, so I think it was about game design, right? So the entire design of the game is predicated on the fact that players only have this illusion of choice. And so when you play a game that is designed that way, you're first saying like, oh, okay, well, that's okay with me because I'm playing the game. And a lot of people don't get that. A lot of people will complain that the game is too luck focused, which I understand. Like, listen, I get it. I've lost to people that I think are very bad and that I think have no business ever having beaten me. But I've also beaten people who feel the same way about me. I mean, there are people, like, I'm not the best player of all time. I think I know quite a good deal about game theory and about the philosophy of games and how to, you know, approach Yu-Gi-Oh from this, or any game really, but especially how to approach Yu-Gi-Oh with my understanding of like the rest of the game. How to approach Yu-Gi-Oh from this philosophical standpoint of like understanding who we are as players, and that it's not necessarily about the game, but about the people who play the game, and the fact that a game is less its rules or its pieces and more its players, and all sorts of things that I can, you know, kind of go on tangents about here. But I am certainly not the best player of all time. I'm across the whole, maybe at Edison I am, but across the whole of Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm not one of the best players either. And that is to say that we, as players, have to understand that it's okay when worse players beat us, because it's intended to happen. In some capacity, we are supposed to lose, and it doesn't feel good to lose games that you like, that you know that the players are, or the person across from the table you is worse. It doesn't feel good to lose those games, and I know that all too well. But that's just the game that we play, and it's a lot of the stuff I've been preaching lately is a far cry from my previous takes on the game. I would say, like, you could even argue that I've become a bit more of a defeatist in the game lately, where I just go, oh yeah, it's Yu-Gi-Oh! I lost the game. Oh, too bad. And that I'm not really concerned about getting better or anything. And first off, at the moment, I'm really actually not concerned about getting better. I'm not practicing, even for Rivet Rulers. I'm not practicing, man. It's not, and it has nothing to do with me thinking I'm too good for the game or anything. It's just, I'm just a little burnt, which is why I haven't made a video in 6 months, and now I'm making 2 back-to-back, and people who like my content can rejoice, and people who think that I'm stupid can have multiple things to laugh at in 2 days. That's really cool. But really, it's kind of the opposite. When you reach this point, that is when you, I think, really start to improve even effortlessly. When you just go, oh, the game was meant to be lost. Like, I couldn't have won that. That was by design. You have to remember something. When you lose a game that you could not have done anything about, and I'm being dead serious here. When you lose a game that you could not have done anything, it doesn't matter what the game is. It doesn't have to be Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't have to be any specific game. When you lose a game that you could do nothing about, the creators wanted you to lose that game. They didn't design that particular specific sequence of cards in mind, but they designed a game where you could lose even if you did everything right. Think about it. The entire point of you losing games that you should not lose to players you should not lose against is because Konami wanted you to. So let's go. So going back to this illusion of choice thing, it's not enough for us to simply go and say, oh, okay, in this game, I had a 50-50 decision that I didn't know which outcome was going to happen. So I have a 50-50 decision, and I don't know which one leads to a particular outcome. And I lost because I hit the wrong 50-50. I hit the wrong coin flip, and I lost. Okay. It's not enough to just say that. What you have to do is also understand why that was the case. You have to understand, like, how the position of the game led you to a scenario where that would have been the case. Now, what it comes down to very often is, in these situations, sometimes you put them in, or you put yourself there. I've played plenty of games where I would say I've come to these 50-50 coin flips, but the only reason why is because I made a mistake earlier in the game. And when that happens, you just kind of ignore, like, why you lost there. And you look to where you lost earlier. Because you can lose without losing. You can definitely make losing plays, and you don't realize they lost you the game until much later. But this is, I mean, if anything, maybe these 2 videos are like a treatise, a series on luck. So when it comes to a game that, also, if you hear that, fan, that's my computer angry that I'm running OBS. But it's a pretty good computer too. I don't know why it does this when I have OBS open too long. But anyway. But when you are... Sorry, I lost my train of thought. That's probably going to happen a lot because it's an impromptu video. By the way, doesn't Fossil Island look so nice on a good computer that can run it? Isn't this lovely? It's not freezing and lagging everywhere that I run. Most of you guys don't know that this place lags and freezes every time you come to it on a bad computer or high graphics. Anyway, when you are playing any kind of game where a worse player than you can win, you just have to accept, like, sometimes you were the worst player and the better player did win. Like, you just have to accept, like, you may have played worse that game, because I've definitely played games where I was like, my opponent played like an idiot and doesn't deserve that win, but upon inspection at the end I was like, oh, okay, I actually just made a huge error here, and I didn't lose the game for a very long time because it wasn't an obvious error. But so when you're put in a position where you lose a game early on and the game just isn't over yet, first off, you can get lucky and get out of that. But secondly, anytime you come to this position where, it's like a coin flip or it's a top deck that you need in order to win the game, and you don't win it, you learn to ignore that. You learn, like, oh, well, I didn't draw the right card. I didn't pick the right card with my MST. Like, you learn to ignore those when you are really good at analyzing your games and realizing that you made a game-losing error earlier. Like, a lot of people, when they analyze games, they only look at, like, the last few turns because they think that the first ones are all fine and dandy. A lot of times people are playing wrong from the very first turn. And a long time ago, I think it's probably been a year ago by now, when me and James did when I did, like, the podcast interview with James, we were talking about it, and we actually talked about people showing us replays where they make mistakes early on, and the example that I brought up was setting Hamster versus setting Sung, and so it's like, they set Sung in turn 1, but they should have set Hamster, and then next turn they have the opportunity to set Hamster, but they continue to not do it. And so after a while, both me and James agreed that, like, there are situations where you just can't even do anything with the person's replay anymore, because the game will just look so different if you were playing it, and the misplays happen just so early on. A lot of people, when they're analyzing their own misplays, don't understand that they have to look to the very beginning in order to see if they made any mistakes like that. So this goes kind of back to what I was saying yesterday about how when you get gigasacked, you have to actually ignore it in your analysis of why you lost, because it's nothing you can actually prepare for. Now I'm saying that when you get gigasacked, first to find out if it actually was sack or not. So, this is in a sort of ways a follow-up video. It is, and it's drawing content from the same article, and it's very long-winded, and I did not plan this one very well, but I just had the urge when I came home to record a video. So, this video is most certainly not as organized as the previous one, but the content is there. The content is from the same source, and so what we're talking about when we say the illusion of choice here is we're not going to focus on games where we made mistakes and we figured them out by analyzing our replays correctly, because those games are games where you made mistakes. Those are the games you learn from, and those are the games where you get those real versus true scenarios. So if we're not focusing on games where we don't make mistakes, and we're not focusing on games if we're not focusing on games where we do make mistakes because we're learning from it anyway, what we have to be focusing on are games where we did not play mistakes and where we actually did lose because we couldn't do anything. So why is it important to ever analyze those games? Well, first off, you have to analyze the game to realize that happened. But is it ever crucial to dwell on those games? And dwelling, I would say no. You don't. You want to kind of, if you lose in such a bad way, you kind of want to get it out of your head, because it'll make you feel worse the more you think about it. But I don't know. I feel worse about games I play bad with, though, and like lose because I wasn't good enough. But it's important to like think about these games because they inform you of the nature of the game. So I guess, last video I said I was not going to be negative at all. This video, I guess maybe there are some negative undertones because I'm kind of telling you like, oh yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh is a bad game. It's all luck. Don't play it anymore because it's not worth your time. But I'm not saying that. But I mean, it might come off I'm saying that. But really, it's more that when you are playing any sort of game like this, you just have to accept that the game you're playing was designed this way. And I don't think there's really that much more to it. I mean, like I think I've said it in 3 or 4 different ways now that it's just the game, and it's designed that way on purpose. So now let's get into the real meat. I've meandered for about 30 minutes on nonsense, on things that you already know. So now that we've crossed the halfway mark, I don't know if this video is going to be an hour long, but now that we've crossed over, we've weeded out the people who don't have an attention span. Let's talk about what that means for you as a person, and what that means for how you interact with the game and the people who play the game and the world around you as well. Because I don't believe that Yu-Gi-Oh is just a game that you play to pass time. I don't believe any game is just a game that you play to pass time. In fact, I believe that every game that you play can teach you something pretty crucial about yourself or the world around you. So the first thing that you can learn from acceptance of the nature of the game is that there are things around you, regardless of being a game or in life, that you can't control and that you shouldn't dwell on, but you should understand. It's important to understand without dwelling, which is exactly what we're doing with this illusion of choice thing here. We're understanding that the game doesn't want us to win sometimes. Well, the game's a metaphor for life. Let's be real here. I told you I was depressed over a girl. So the game's a metaphor for life. You're not supposed to win sometimes. So why do we keep playing? Well, why do you keep living? And that's a good question. And luckily there's no Live Leak logo on this video, so don't have to worry about it. But understanding ourselves from games is actually a very, very crucial thing to do in like this game theory side of philosophy, or maybe I should say this philosophical side of game theory. One of the things that's important is that you don't put too much stock in events that occur, and instead put stock into events that you want to occur. So what this means is that the things that go on around you, they will affect you, but only if you let them affect you negatively. So as such, I was saying like, well, why do we continue to play Yu-Gi-Oh when most of our games come down to the luck of the draw, or the coin flip of which card we MST, or the coin flip of which card in our hand gets ripped by Spirit Reaper, or which card they hit with their duo. Why do we continue to play the game when that is what so much of it comes down to? Because all the same, you are dealing with these situations in life, and Yu-Gi-Oh, any game, but Yu-Gi-Oh especially, is a low stakes situation to play out your responses to those things. So by understanding and accepting that you're not supposed to win in Yu-Gi-Oh at least some of the time, you can kind of just start to like shape your mentality to say, oh, well, if I'm not supposed to win some of the time, that means that the only time I can get upset is when I lose to something that I should have known better than to do, when I make a mistake, that's the only time I can get upset. Now you advance to like a higher level of saying, oh, I made a mistake and that's why I lost. So that means that I can't get upset because it was my fault. So now you can't get upset when you make a mistake because it was your fault, and you can't get upset when you don't make a mistake and it wasn't your fault because nothing you could do about it. You just eventually you just don't allow yourself to get upset. Now, am I the perfect example of this? No. Absolutely not. I get upset over very minor things very often, and I try not to. I'm weeding myself. I'm weeding that out of myself. But I've definitely come to terms with Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's helping me come to terms with like those same sort of things happening in my life. So maybe this is the intervention episode because like I've strayed from talking about Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, it's still coming up obviously, so I'm not completely strayed from it, but the crucial thing to take away from the Aurelian understanding of Yu-Gi-Oh! That's one of the... I was going to write another article on that, but that might just creep into I might just make it like a 70-page huge Giga article, ultra thing that will cover every topic of... And that's what this article I think was originally supposed to be. The title, the working title is Everything I've Learned About Yu-Gi-Oh! But the idea is... It's Aurelian Yu-Gi-Oh! So it's based on the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, which are based on the teachings of Epictetus, but Marcus Aurelius did them in a more personal and accessible form, so people always, flock to him for Stoicism. But so the nature of Yu-Gi-Oh! Goes a lot deeper when you look at it through this Aurelian lens, because Aurelius did not only say, the typical Stoic things of like, well, if you did something stupid, you can't complain when something stupid happens, and if you didn't do anything wrong and something bad still happened, it's because that's just how it happens, so don't complain. That's the typical Stoic mindset. It's very, paraphrase, very layman. It's not worth it to go into a full spiel on Stoicism in a Yu-Gi-Oh! Video. But in order to be really good at Yu-Gi-Oh!, you kind of have to be a Stoic. In some capacity. You have to at least understand Stoicism as it relates to Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is exactly the point of me talking about something I would call Aurelian Yu-Gi-Oh! You just have to have this mindset of like, why am I playing this game if I am not winning the games where I play better? And the answer is because... one, because maybe you enjoy it. Secondly, because it's a preparation game for dealing with the same things in life that you don't have the ability to control, that you can't make a major part of your daily routine. And when I say routine, I don't mean like getting up, washing your hair, brush your teeth. Your daily routine would be your just your outlook. It would be like the things that you do to keep yourself within your personal philosophical bounds. Your routine in this sense has nothing to do with the activities that you perform every day, but rather the mentality with which you perform your activities. So, in a way, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Responsibly, understanding, it's like drinking, you have to do it responsibly. Playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In a responsible way, and looking at your replays, analyzing your mistakes, it helps you form a better routine for approaching day-to-day life through a philosophical lens. So I, as someone who would call myself at least a budding Stoic, I'm not perfect at it yet, and I haven't read all of Aurelius or Epictetus, and I would like to finish soon, but I have been very busy. But as someone who is most certainly at least a budding Stoic, who is greatly invested in approaching Yu-Gi-Oh! In this manner, doing game theory and philosophy, specifically philosophical game theory, not necessarily just like loading up a game editor and saying, okay, well, today I'm going to design a game that does this and like is this rewarding to a player and other sort of game design principles, but specifically through studying the game as a philosopher. Has actually helped me in my personal life quite a deal. I think people who know me know quite well that I used to have like pretty bad anger issues regarding the game. If I felt like you sacked me, I was going to cuss you out. Like it was just, and I could be pretty mean about whenever I thought people didn't play very well and won anyway. And obviously that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths when I'm supposed to be like this helpful person who, people come to me for rulings. I'm a head judge on doing, but people are I won't say they look up to me, but people definitely see me as sort of a leading figure in the community in some capacity. And so when someone that you feel like is either a very good player or at least a very knowledgeable one is also really mean when they lose a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, like it doesn't matter how competitive you are, like and it can be, you can take it seriously. Like I take it seriously, and I always obviously have taken it seriously, hence the gamer rage. But like you can take it seriously without doing that, obviously, and every good competitor knows that. And it took me a while to learn that to the degree I know it now, because I wasn't really looking at the game the way I look at it now from this philosophical lens. Basically, what I'm saying is that you take everything I said in the first 30 minutes of the video, and anything that I said that you went, well, that's obvious, I already knew that. Think about why I was saying it. I even said, I went on like a little tangent about how I don't make videos for people who don't already know things. When you're watching my videos, what I assume is that you are quite good at Yu-Gi-Oh. And if you aren't good, if you aren't good at Yu-Gi-Oh, you want to be really good at it. That those are the two things. You're either already very good and you're looking for like ways to approach the game from ways you never thought of before, or you really, really want to be the type of player who can approach the game in these ways. So why would I go on tangents? Or not tangent. Like, why would I make a video whose entire topic is something that everyone already knows, right? First off, because not everyone knows it. Not everyone who's good at the game knows that most of your games, regardless of how well you play, you don't have very much agency. A lot of people don't realize that. They think like, oh, my opponent top decked the out, or like my opponent, they open the nuts or something, and they'll look at luck that way, and they'll say, yeah, that happens sometimes. And that's fine. Like if that's the way you understand luck, that's a good start. Understanding just how much it plays a role in the game is very important to getting better at it, though. A lot of people, and I would say, in fact, my least favorite phrase in any gaming community actually is skill issue. Like it's my least favorite phrase, because it almost never actually is a skill issue. Like, or it can be, but like it's always the people who say skill issue are literally always the worst players, or at least like mediocre average players who simply don't understand that like skill is not the determining factor in Yu-Gi-Oh! The majority of the time. And it just kind of relates back to life in that way, because things come at you that you can't control constantly. So your ability to like look at Yu-Gi-Oh! As this, in this top-down fashion where you go, okay, well, I opened my 5 cards or my 6 cards, depending on the format of choice, and they were very good or they were very bad. And you can make, and when regardless of if they're good or bad, the entire goal is to make the most of them, right? your entire goal with a good hand is to set up a board your opponent can't beat and put them in the seat of having the illusion of choice. Or if your hand's very bad, it is to play in such a way that tricks your opponent into thinking you have a good hand, or in a way that will facilitate you getting the most out of your cards. There's a reason, in real life, we say that when you're unlucky, you've been dealt a bad hand. That's one of the many euphemisms we use for it. It is effectively the same thing. You're effectively playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In real life, or poker, Magic, whatever game you decide to play, where the only thing you can do is either perform with what you have access to or complain. And complaining doesn't get you anywhere. Getting mad doesn't get you anywhere. And, you can obviously, you can do what I'm doing now, which is where, you kind of point out the flaws of something, but you're not necessarily complaining. Like, I don't think this video comes off as complaining, or maybe people do, but, I don't think that I'm complaining by saying Yu-Gi-Oh! Is mostly luck. In fact, I'm telling you that that's okay, that's by design. You can't, or you shouldn't complain about it. In the same way, we can complain about capitalism, or we can complain about the government, and those things can be changed. If enough people get together, we can change anything about the world we live in that way. But, a single person isn't doing much. And, you can say, well, the system is not good. The way that we, work too much, or the way that we apply ourselves to get very little out of it, or just to put money in someone else's pockets. You can say it's not fair, and I wouldn't say that's complaining. I would say that's just a very objective truth. But, the entire point of these videos is, no matter what I'm talking about, and usually it's Yu-Gi-Oh! And now I'm talking about something a bit deeper than Yu-Gi-Oh! The entire point of these videos is to get you thinking about deeper, more complex topics, and it doesn't matter if it's about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or not. And the thing is, you can apply anything I've said about in any video to any game. Any game, any activity that you enjoy in real life as well. You can apply so many of the theories and the philosophies I've given you throughout these videos to all those things. And which is exactly kind of a point. These videos have the Yu-Gi-Oh! Skin to them while I'm playing. In fact, I liken RuneScape to Yu-Gi-Oh! A lot in this regard. Luck is a very crucial factor, especially if you play an Iron Man account or something. Luck is your sole determining factor practically for many things. But I think the games are actually very similar in a way, other than the fact that one's an MMO and one's a card game. But they're very similar in regards to the Aurelian approach, and you just have to accept if you made a mistake, you can't be mad, and if you didn't make a mistake, you couldn't control it, so you can't be mad. So yeah, so the number one thing throughout all these videos that I've been trying to help people with is thinking about the game in a more complex way than just which 40 cards are the best for whatever tournament I'm going to, or which 15 side cards will do the best. What should my 15th extra deck card be? Those are all really shallow approaches to the game, and they're necessary. You have to be shallow. You have to approach the game in a shallow way for the sake of going to a specific tournament. You have to make these decisions of which cards are going to be in your deck, and which deck you're going to play, and sorts of things like that. But the other thing that you have to do is kind of reconcile the negatives of the game and make them positives. Use the game to teach you something about yourself. And in the case of my other videos, use the game to make you think about something, and use the game to make you like understand ways that you can logically break down the things that you're doing and improve them. Which is, for example, that was pretty much the entire point of the last video, right? Was saying like, okay, well, let's use some logic here and say that, we don't get sacked every round, and instead we're going to fight against decks doing normal things that those decks do for the majority of the time. And so how are we going to side against that? And, that's, this logical approach of saying like, well, the sack doesn't matter. The sack is going to happen, and if it happens, it happens. Just if it happens, it happens. That's going to be a very common theme across this philosophy of understanding the game through the Aurelian lens. Ultimately, what you have to do is you have to take knowledge of these things, the illusion of choice, the real and the true. You have to combine them all into this understanding of you as a person in the game. It's not just the game. It's not just which 40 cards, or I guess 70 cards, you decide to play. It's not just, the matchups that you decide for or anything like that. It's how you as a person intend to approach anything in a philosophical way to to get the most out of it for yourself, because it's not enough to just play a game if it doesn't give you anything. And I think that's what people miss. They play a game specifically for enjoyment, which is fine. I mean, playing a game if you get enjoyment out of a game, that's absolutely fine. Like you don't have to play every single game. You don't have to spend every single moment of your life thinking like, how does this improve me as a person? But a game that you spend a large majority of your time on, which is exactly what a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players do. It doesn't matter if they play Edison or Current. It doesn't matter, like Jesse Cotton, for example. I mean, he's, the biggest name in Yu-Gi-Oh at the moment. He definitely thinks about this game as more than a game to him, as he thinks about it in a way that helps him approach other things in his life. Patrick Hoban did, when he wrote Road of the King, he wrote the opposite, but the opposite is not exclusive to, like, he didn't write exclusive of it, but he wrote the opposite of saying like, how do these things in your personal life affect your approach on the game? But he did not exclude the possibility of this alternative thinking of how to have your thoughts about the game affect your personal life. So, basically, whenever you load up a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, you just have to consider, like, I'm playing a game where I'm not supposed to win all the time, and no matter how good or bad my opponent is, no matter how well I play, there is a chance that I do not win it because I wasn't supposed to. There's a chance I don't even get to play, and that's okay. That is exactly what the game was designed to be. And you have to focus on the games that you are destined to play, that you are capable of being in. The thing is that those games are very often just flipped. They are, for you, they're playable, and for the opponent, they aren't. So many games are just actual coin flips. Just like real life, which is exactly the point of, like, what I've been saying this whole time. So one of the lines in the article, in fact, I say it twice, or I paraphrase it the second time. I don't really say I'm a pretty good writer. I don't typically say the same thing multiple times with the same wording unless it's like meaningful to, it's symbolic. But one of the things that I question, in, like, when you're writing an article of like any kind of philosophical theory, you have to put questions in the prose. One of the things that I question is, like, going back to the real and true thing from yesterday's video, if the real and the true, or rather if your your feels, your immediate feels, your gut instinct, and your mediated feels, your emotional response, like that you have actually like curated. If those are both true for you, and they are both therefore they're either both true or both two halves of a whole truth, what's the point of distinguishing them? If both are just equally true to you as a person, what is the point of distinguishing them? And so I simply put, it gets you where you want to be. I just put it like that. It gets you where you want to be. And then I ask again, in this section, actually, because I've already written a fair bit of the section that this video is based on, I ask, if there are X percentage of games that are not meant to be won, and a Y percentage of games that are not meant to be played, and I put it in those terms. There are by design, and it's not a constant percentage throughout formats, but like you can look at any format and like take the average quality of a hand and say X percentage of games I'm not supposed to win them, and Y percentage I'm not even supposed to play them. I'm not even supposed to show up to those games. But if there's an X percentage that you aren't supposed to win and a Y percentage you aren't even supposed to play, what's the point of even considering these outcomes? Like, what's the point of looking at this game and going, oh, okay, that's what happens. That's what was supposed to happen. Okay, my bad. I shouldn't have even showed up. What's the point of that? And the answer that I give is a pretty similar statement that it helps you understand the nature of the game, and it helps you understand, or helps you figure out and like understand why you keep playing it. If it's like that to you. In other words, in both cases, basically I'm saying it gets you where you want to be as a player, but also as a person. And so the main thing that I would say, I think the main thing is probably my favorite phrase this entire video. I'm a good writer but not a good speaker. I keep talking over myself like that and saying the same like little lead-ins, but the main thing to take away from this video is like not just like in last video I said you had to kind of like cull your emotional response to the games in order to look at them objectively and like figure out which games were the real ones and which were the true ones and which ones you were supposed to study and prepare for. In this video, it's not necessarily that you have to be completely unemotional. It's that you have to be happy that you saw games that you couldn't play. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, right? You have to appreciate that there are games that you shouldn't be winning. There are games you shouldn't win that you do, because those are generally the games where like skill comes into play. You can win. I mean, like I'm not saying you can't win games that like you aren't supposed to be playing, where you have like really really bad luck. And like one of the games that one of the things that I point out in the article so far is that like that MST thing, like if you hit the 50-50, then you win the game. I mean, it didn't matter that you got sacked because you had a good coin flip. But you have to, in a way, just appreciate that these games exist, because if they didn't exist, let's say Yu-Gi-Oh! Word Chess, and there were no games that you ever lost where you played better, what would you actually learn from that as a person? And that's one of the reasons why I don't like chess as much anymore. Because even though chess teaches you very good problem solving skills and teaches you very good pattern recognition, and I'm okay at chess, I'm certainly not a master. I'm like 1650, 1700 rated. I'm okay at chess. I'm like a club level player, and I'm not a player anyone would say, oh yeah, that dude's absolutely awful. I mean, maybe Magnus would say I'm absolutely, but I'm not anyone that I'm not a player anyone would just like say I know nothing about chess. But I'm not obviously good at it. But one of the reasons why I quit improving in chess, and I quit improving because I quit playing, one of those reasons is because it just doesn't give you anything as a game. It doesn't give you any meaningful lessons on life. Which sounds stupid. It's just a game. Like, why would I want my game to give me meaningful lessons on life if I'm playing the game to get away or to escape? But it's because fundamentally, any game you play is an extension of yourself. Anything that you choose to do is is an outlet for you. And there's no point playing a game that makes you mad. But there's no point playing a game that never makes you mad either. Because you need to care. But you have to understand that, like, caring is only relevant if it gets you something, if it gets you somewhere, if it makes you a better person to care. And obviously I care a great deal about, or at least I used to. Again, like, I've been kind of burnt out and not practicing like I should, or doing anything Yu-Gi-Oh related lately. But RuneScape, I'm kind of burnt out now because I've been going so hard on combat achievements, and I don't know what game I'm going to be playing right now because I'm just a little burnt on both. But RuneScape is a great game that lately I've been greatly caring about improving in. I mean, the past 4 months, I've done 2 of the hardest PVM challenges in the game. I've gotten 1,500 combat achievement points, which is like 3.5 times what I originally had. And that's in 4 months. I've been playing this game since like 2016, man. I've been playing RuneScape. I've been playing RuneScape even longer. I've been playing RuneScape since like 2008. But old school RuneScape, I've been playing since like 2016, and I've just never had the amount of improvement and progress that I have in the past 4 months, because lately it's been a game I've cared about improving at. So you have to care. You have to care in order to improve. And even though this game has been most certainly frustrating to me on multiple occasions while learning the Inferno, while learning Colosseum, while doing combat achievements that I feel like I should have gotten but for some reason didn't, and I just have to reflect on, like, oh, I made a mistake, and I can't be mad that I made a mistake. I just have to learn from a mistake. But also just things like, if I'm going for a speedrun task and my scythe just decides to hit 000s 9 times in a row, I can't be mad about that either, because that's not my fault. I can't help that. But yeah, it's the same in Yu-Gi-Oh. You have to take these games where you can't do anything as kind of like a symbol of what it means to... I mean, saying what it means to be alive is kind of cheesy, but kind of as a symbol of what it means to participate in something bigger than yourself. Yu-Gi-Oh is not just you. If Yu-Gi-Oh were a single player game, you can ensure that you win pretty much every single time, I'm pretty sure. But it's not. It's not a single player game. It's not meant that the better player always wins, and neither is anything in life. And so maybe this video turned into way too much of a philosophical rant, and maybe it was just not my place to tell people how to live their life or anything like that. But I think that the entire goal of doing something that is meaningful to you, that you care about, is to improve yourself, and whether it be in that regard or in all regards. And so I use Yu-Gi-Oh as a way, and RuneScape as well. I would love to make a RuneScape video. I just feel like my audience doesn't care about RuneScape very much. Like, I have it on in the background because talking about the game, talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, recording the videos gets me through brainless grinds like what I'm doing right now that I wouldn't enjoy doing otherwise, because I'm not focused on the grind, I'm focused on the talking. So it gives me a chance to, like, get around that But um, but like, yeah, using a game that you care about in any capacity to improve yourself as a person is, I think, one of the best ways to also improve at the game. So basically, take what I'm saying here to mean that, like, if you care about getting better at Yu-Gi-Oh, then you should also care about being better as a person and, like, understanding yourself and your reactions to the world better, because the way that you react to the game will, and vice versa, by the way, will influence how you react to the things around you that you can't control. And it's very important to not be reactionary. And you have to react, but, like, you can't be reactionary. You can't make all of your decisions based on what you see and what's been done to you. You have to you have to make crucial decisions for yourself, like, before they're done. You can't just wait and see everything that's going to happen first. But you also, when things that are out of your control occur, you can't get upset. And when things that are in your control go wrong, it's because you made a mistake. You can't get upset about that either. You have to learn from it. So that's just kind of me talking about how, like, Yu-Gi-Oh and, like, going the philosophy route for these videos and, like, talking to people and ranting for hours about Yu-Gi-Oh topics and writing articles as well, and any kind of thoughts about Yu-Gi-Oh that have led to me understanding Yu-Gi-Oh better have actually helped me grow as a person as well, and, like, have helped my anger issues a lot, and helped me kind of, like, understand where we as people, not just me as a person, but we as people, as, like, all people who can benefit from hearing this sort of thing, like, where we are. So yeah, I guess this one's a little preachy, and, like I said, depressed over a girl, so sue me. But yeah. Everyone knows artists make their best work when they're depressed, so maybe this video helped someone. Maybe it was just a long-winded way of me saying something people already knew, but like I said, if I say something you already know, that means that you're probably in the right spot when it comes to video watching, and if I say something you don't already know, then you're probably also in the right spot. I don't know. It's up to the viewer, Like I said, I try and make videos for people who are already, I say post-advanced, people who are already very good at the game who want to improve even further, is what I try and make videos for, because I want people to get the chance to think about topics that, like, maybe they typically would not come up with on their own. And I haven't come up with every single topic I talk about on my own. I've definitely discussed with people about, like, certain video ideas. And but yeah, that's probably all I have for this video then. And yeah, see you guys later.